Pull on up a chair. You're at Camp Video Games, y'all.
Hello and welcome to Camp Video Games. This is a podcast that covers video games and their multimedia adaptations. We're talking The Last of Us. My name is Junior Camp Counselor Sean, and with me is Junior Camp Counselor Josh.
This is Junior Camp Counselor Josh. If you get bit by anybody, don't keep it a secret. That's like always the case.
Tell an adult.
Always the case. Oh, I got bit. I kept it a secret for just a little too long, and now everybody's getting bit and transforming into mushroom people. And I just got to say, stop keeping it a secret so we can put you down like dogs, all right?
If you get bit, tell a Junior Camp Counselor. Don't wake up the head counselor, Michael Mayonnaise. He's sleeping. But let us know and we'll escort you to the showers.
Like Old Yeller.
Or Milo and Otis. You ever watch Milo and Otis?
No, but the showers I just put together, that might be a little too far.
It's easier cleaning up. Milo and Otis,
anyway,
very short.
rolling.
Milo and Otis is another dog and cat adventure movie.
Yeah.
But they killed like 20 cats to make the movie to get some like quote unquote stunts done. The filmmakers had absolutely no scruples in killing. They threw like animals off the cliffs and like into rivers. And
this is very helpful to put me in the mindset to talk about this very sad, dark world again.
The Last of
week.
Us from 2013. From your dusty old PlayStation 3. But we're playing the PS4 and PS5 remaster / remake consecutively.
So confusing, but I'm glad you laid it out that way because I did this week, as I've been watching a lot of development history and reading stuff, I watched the No Clip documentary on the remake that I'm playing.
Yeah.
And now I understand that it is indeed a remake.
Okay.
And like it is definitely kicked up a notch from the version you played.
Interesting.
Because as this was announced, I feel like people joke about The Last of Us as like the most like remastered, remade, re-released series of like all time. It's like kind of a punching bag of a joke, you know, because it's like it feels like every year you see a trailer for like The Last of Us Part 1 remake for PC.
Sure.
You know, like,
besides Grand Theft Auto 5, which has it originally came out on.
Well, that's more because that's just like a live service game that keeps going. So they're kind of introducing like new quote unquote, I think, seasons of content.
Interesting.
Whereas this is like they keep retouching the story. But like once I saw everything they were doing, the amount of like just quality control, graphical update, detail in the environment, I was like, okay, I get why you would call this a remake. I don't know if I paid for it. I maybe paid like $10 to upgrade it or something. Like they didn't charge $60 for a full new game.
Okay,
is my understanding.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just thought that was worth addressing. It's like, okay, I understand the difference now.
I assume they stay true to the overall story.
Like they even go into like the most we changed is like once we realized we're working with like the SSD drive, like the solid state drive on the PS5, and like, there are truly no load times. They're like, oh, we had to like fix some like motion continuity between cuts. You know, we're like, oh, this person was moving, and then we cut, and there's no load screen, so we need them to be actively moving when we go into the game engine. And I was like, yeah, okay, I appreciate this attention to detail, and I can respect that.
I was worried that they were going to like, you know, change the game and make Joel into a good person.
Yes, I've finished the game since our last episode recorded, and I have thoughts, but that'll probably be next week's episode.
That's right, campers. This is part 2 in our Last of Us Part 1. I'm Sean Part 1 and Josh Point O. Okay, listen, The Last of Us. It's more than just a bunch of zombie cliches. I mean, at the heart of the story, it's about the human condition.
Yeah, it's a very reactionary take on the human condition, in my opinion.
I think last time we talked, we ended with the death of Tess, Joel's post-apocalypse mammy, or at least business partner. They seem to have like an on and off romance, but like an ongoing business relationship as smugglers in Boston. And to catch up, I mean, Joel and Tess, they they take on a new shipping job, which is to take this girl named Ellie to the Fireflies, which is a militia group. And then Tess gets bit by zombies and dies. And she says to Joel, if you feel anything for me, or if there's anything between us, you at least owe me this. Take the girl to the Fireflies.
Right. Because
the girl is Ellie, and she's immune to the cordyceps infection on paper.
Right. And the last thing I want to say is that, like, I think we may have skipped like the last scene of this act or whatever we want to call it.
Catch us up.
That I just pulled up on screen for a moment of Joel and Ellie attempting to reckon with what just happened to Tess, and it reinforces Joel's refusal to grieve anything in his life and just keep surviving, keep murdering. Because Ellie's like, sorry about what happened to Tess or something like that.
Yeah, Joel's like, new rule. We don't talk about
We don't
Tess.
talk about Tess ever. And like, that's just his rule about anything in life.
Yes.
We don't talk.
And Joel does not talk about Tess after that at all.
And was this also the scene where he's like, I need you to do as I say, blah, 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 blah. And she goes, yeah, whatever you say goes. And he just goes, right.
Yep.
It's just like, oh, yeah, I'm really endeared to this man now because his daughter died, and I just have to hold that as the reason I care about him, even though he's a dick.
It's really interesting because this game, I mean, Joel is the main protagonist of The Last of Us. He's front and center on the promotional material, but it's always with Ellie at his side. And like, Joel is not a good person. Tess says it best earlier in when they're talking about taking Ellie as quote unquote cargo, because they're smugglers. They'll just move stuff that needs to stay on the DL. And Tess says straight up, she's like, Joel, we're bad people. And Joel's response to that is, no, we're survivors.
Yep.
And I think those are one and the same to survive in this version of Earth. In this post-apocalypse, you got to kill to live. I mean, it's the law of the jungle. Only the strong survive, and you must kill to survive.
Yeah, which is kind of the dogmatic view of people who are running this country right now. Which is, again, that's why I don't know. I keep drilling on this because I'm also trying to put it in context of 2020 hindsight of like, this was what media was like. This was prestige media, was strong male anti-hero Walter White, and they
Rick
were all
Grimes and
these people are all trying to ape Tony Soprano, as we talked about last week, and kind of missing some of the humor of it. But like, people I think still say like Breaking Bad is the greatest television show of all time. I disagree. It's The Sopranos, but for this reason. The Sopranos was a lot more critique and less celebration of the anti-hero, in my opinion, than the stuff from the early 2010s like this.
Sure. Joel is a prime example for an anti-hero, based on, I mean, the values that he like eschews, and like, I mean, honestly, like, I mean, his actions are hard to redeem. Like, when you go through, you know, what we're going to talk through today, I mean, Joel is just kind of a man who's doing his best to protect the people that he's taken on as his
I'm just sort of
chosen
like
family,
foreshadowing my argument for how I feel about the end of the game.
Yeah. Okay, so Tess, she sacrifices herself to give Joel and Ellie a chance to escape the Fedra soldiers that are coming in to finish what they started with the Fireflies, because their original plan, right, was to deliver Ellie to this band of Fireflies who were going to use her to help find a cure for this cordyceps infection. And Joel doesn't really care about this mission when it starts off. He's like, I don't want to. I mean, he doesn't outright say, I don't want to hang out with this child because she reminds me of my daughter, but that's what his actions are saying. Like, you know, he's he's not living a life that really demands he spend a lot of time with like teenagers, especially like ones that bring up such a hard part of his life. And to have this job put on him is, I mean, it's a bad work day to start with. But then it turns into a life-changing event. And man, if you're watching the footage on
I didn't put it up. I can rewind it a little bit. It's very funny.
Let's just show how well made this game is and how nothing is buggy.
Yeah.
And so if you're just listening, we're watching some footage of Joel not holding a board. But the game thinks he's holding a board.
Yeah.
And it just looks like he's walking around giving like political thumbs up. You know what I mean? Like he's at a rally and he's going to pick up a baby and kiss it.
Yeah, there's like this is actually a really good demonstration of one of my favorite sort of like pieces of jank about this game is there's something about the way the camera always stays like aligned to, I don't know, like if it's aligned to their hips or what, but
I think
like
it's their shoulders.
There's something about like the way their heads move in conjunction with the camera that always like, if you could, like, they always look a little bit drunk if you're moving the camera, like, while moving the character a lot. It's something about the way their eye, like, their focus never changes, but their head's constantly moving, but you're still always aligned to the shoulders. It's very fascinating.
So this is a Naughty Dog game, and earlier this week I wanted to do a little a refresher on what Naughty Dogs had to offer in preparation for this discussion. And so I played the first, like, 20 minutes of Crash Bandicoot, the original on the PlayStation.
Yeah.
And I almost threw up. There's like two different like camera modes that the game goes through when you're playing as Crash Bandicoot.
Yeah.
There's the stay right behind him while he's running and picking up other mangoes, I think. But then there's these weird platforming parts where the camera zips so aggressively to stay on track with Crash. I just feel like Naughty Dog has like who's I don't think this is a Neil Druckmann decision, but whoever's in charge.
He wasn't that. I don't even know if he was working for them yet when Crash happened, but
whoever's working the cameras is just really intent on staying right on their mark, and it's a little aggressive.
Yeah, which is interesting to think of as like. That was their response to Mario 64, and like people still speedrun and talk about Mario 64 as one of the greatest games of all time. And Crash Bandicoot, people are like, yeah, that's kind of PlayStation's mascot, I guess, but nobody's really playing it. Nobody's talking about it, you know? And then I talked about this last week, but I played Jak and Daxter, and it had very similar problems, but it's in a full 3D world where you control the camera now. And like it does that like first off, the cameras are the controls from the right analog stick are inverted, which at the time felt right. And then for some reason at some point we transitioned and figured out that doing it normal is better. And I couldn't switch it. And like between that and what you're talking about, the camera, the way it snaps all the time and like tries to force you to look at something that like your eyes weren't moving towards. It also made me seasick in 30 minutes or less. So
apparently The Last of Us started off as a Jak and Daxter.
Really?
Yeah. So if you want to play a mod of The Last of Us, just replace Joel with Jak and Ellie with Daxter. I think that's the way that the game was intended to be.
Makes
played.
a lot of sense. It is sort of Jak and Daxter meets Uncharted. Like Uncharted fixes a lot of this. How do we do this third person like controlled camera stuff? Yeah. So that it's perfected by The Last of Us. In spite of how silly we say it looks sometimes, it works very smoothly. I never got sick.
I never played it, but there's a first person mod for The Last of Us that I don't think would work so great.
Yeah, Cyberpunk is like the only first person game I've played in the last like decade. I just assumed they will all make me sick. That one was done very well, but
I play a lot of first-person shooters, so that's the only time if I'm using a mouse, I normal alignment with like the controls is fine. But if I'm playing with controllers, I need the y-axis to be inverted. That's just a little thing about me, campers. So The Last of Us.
Did you switch it for this game?
Yeah.
Actually, I also tried like Doom Eternal for a little bit. the newest one, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
And
So the trailer for the third in this trilogy just came out, and it's looking pretty fun.
That unfortunately made me very sick very fast.
Yeah, that'll happen.
Doom is a little too fast to be like 60 FPS, this level of 4K detail for me.
If we ever talk Doom, we're talking the original stuff.
Yeah. Anyway,
sure.
The Last of Us. Anyway, there's that scene. And then the next thing I thought was pretty interesting is this scene where they're out in the woods and Ellie is like, I've never been in the woods before.
Yeah.
And like even now, like since last week, I've now played the DLC, which is a prequel.
Oh, good. I wasn't sure if you did or not.
And it just made me more confused about how this world works.
Okay.
But we could save that for like our last episode, I guess.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, just to talk about like Ellie like experiencing all these new things, I think it comes with two purposes. First, it's doing some world building where like Ellie has lived in quarantine zones her entire life, which means that she's lived in a ragtag semblance of civilization.
Yeah.
Which is really just like walls keep the infected out, but they also keep the people in. Like it's that old adage is like when you build a wall, are you keeping people out or are you just trapping yourself?
Yeah.
Like that's what walls do. And like she is living a completely sheltered life.
Yeah.
Like I mean, before she got bit, like I don't know if she ever saw an infected up close. It doesn't seem like it.
Yeah. I've got a lot of thoughts, but I'm going to save it for the end when we actually talk about that.
The second part of it
like it just doesn't all add up quite right to like why. The only thing I'll say now is like why there is such this strong revolutionary movement. It doesn't correlate with just how dangerous the world actually is when you go outside the walls, if that makes sense.
The like the Fireflies like rise to power.
Yeah.
Or is Fedra is like over response. Like cuz like Fedra as an organization is like it started off kind of as like I mean they're more like FEMA than anything. But they basically nullified the rest of every other branch of the government, and they're like, we are the response now. We're in charge, and that had to have
like
come.
God dang Anthony Fauci, am I right?
Apparently, he doesn't have Secret Service like protection anymore.
Hey, one of many funny things that happened this week, just to be petty. But
the Gulf of America, folks.
Let's go.
Let's live here. Let's continue to be proud of this.
I love it.
Okay, so the other reason that I think we're having Ellie say these things, where she's like, oh my God, I've never seen I've never been in the woods before. I've never seen like a
real
boat
fireflies.
Before. Real fireflies, yeah. Is because they're trying very hard in a little bit of time to establish that like that fatherly role that Joel's taking, where he gets to be there for her big moments. Like this is like in terms of fatherhood, he's like he missed so much with the death of his daughter Sarah, and the 20 years passed. Like I don't think he grew any more tender as a result. He was already a kind of gruff, like
it definitely
no nonsense.
Doesn't seem so.
Like even with his daughter, like and in like on what is like their last night, but like a very tender moment. Like he's just kind of like, oh, what are you doing? Okay, well, yeah. Like I'm just gruff, stoic.
Thanks for the watch or whatever.
Yeah, stoicism I think is like this is a cautionary tale against stoicism, where it's like you need to have a heart. That's what The Last of Us is trying to teach you, is that like you can't be a lone wolf. You need a pack, and like in order to survive. Oh boy, I'm already starting to talk more sequel stuff, but let's see. Now that Tess is dead and Joel has been basically forced to agree to take on Ellie as his cargo, they don't know their next destination necessarily. They just know that like there is a Firefly outpost to the west of wherever they are. And in order for them to make any real progress in their adventures, they need to get a car.
Yeah.
And Joel knows a guy.
Has nobody told them like specifically it's at the University of Colorado or whatever that university is they're going to?
That's Tommy who tells them that.
Okay.
A little bit later.
Does he know at this point, like, oh, Tommy's out west and we can go meet Tommy?
Yeah,
okay.
I think that is the plan.
I'm just trying to like remember the order of operations here.
Yes. The the first step though is that they need to find Bill. Bill is Joel and Tess's old connection as smugglers. Bill lives on the outside of the quarantine zone, which means he's just got free range to go wherever and do whatever he wants. Like, that's the big difference.
Bill's like a sovereign citizen kind of guy.
Very much
like,
so.
If you just know that kind of guy, that's Bill's character.
Yes. According to Charter number 17.
Sir, officer, actually, you're not in compliance with the law. I am free to be in my car, and I don't have to give you anything.
I'm a sovereign citizen. Yeah, dude. Bill is a libertarian Tea Party sovereign citizen, log cabin Republican.
Yeah.
But as
it's like the kind of guy who's like, I don't need QAnon. I'm already crazy.
Yeah, he's like QAnon dilettantes.
Yeah.
Like on their way to find Bill, which is just like they see a smoke, they see smoke off in the distance, and Joel's just like, I bet that's Bill, because he's never done this before. He always has like a coordinated meetup spot with Bill. He doesn't really know where to find Bill, but he's savvy enough to like go exploring. But when he and Ellie start to find signs of Bill, which is just like barricades, barbed wire. You will be shot. No trespassers. Trespassers will be shot.
I love the touch of his folding chair on top of his barricade.
Yes.
Like as if he just goes and sits up there with a rifle and just shoots infected as they approach for fun. You know?
I completely get it. I live out in the country where I can just shoot a gun from my porch, and the appeal is unending. It is so fun to just sit on your porch and to just be like, I bet I could hit that there beer bottle over there. And like, it's fun. So what? It's good.
Yeah.
Left or right, we all can agree. Shooting a can from 100 yards away.
This is a
feeling.
mostly unrelated story. I had reason this week to go on rumble.com.
What's that?
It's right-wing YouTube.
Oh, okay.
It's hilarious because I just like the first video I clicked, first thing that pops up is boom, guns.com.
Oh, hell yeah.
And it's just like wall to wall, just like bam, 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 just guns going off. And like, be like, you're a strong man with a hard, long dick, aren't you?
And it works.
It definitely works, and you definitely use it all the time on women.
Guns.com, man. I wish I was a genius back at like the .com like bubble where I could have just like bought like pizza.com or whatever, and like then sell it for $2 billion.
The bill would definitely be hanging out on Rumble and going to guns.com to get that 20% off for watching Steven Crowder.
Oh boy. Or Stephen Paddock. So we haven't talked really about the arsenal that Joel has amassed on his trip so far. He starts off with a semi-automatic 9mm handgun, and the first weapon that he finds, I think, is the rifle, the bolt action rifle. And you can I think my favorite weapon in the entire Last of Us series is the Molotov cocktail.
Interesting.
It's an interesting decision gameplay wise, and this is one of the gameplay mechanics that I really like to consider with The Last of Us or any survival horror adjacent type thing is resource management.
Yeah. And
the kind of the forageable like resources that you can find can yield a small amount of like recipes, but to make a Molotov cocktail, you need alcohol and you need rags. And those happen to be the same ingredients that can make health kits. And that's a very interesting
choose death
balancing.
Or life.
Yes.
Which way, Western man?
It's Molotov cocktail every time. For me.
It's interesting that I played on the second easiest setting, and I didn't even process what ingredients were required for what.
Yeah.
Because I was never I never had to make a decision about what resources I needed.
Playing through on hard mode, that's a very different story.
Yeah. And
because, I mean, what hard mode really just does is turns the enemies into more bullet sponges and just cuts the resources in half. and then you start making decisions, and it's
Yeah.
not just okay, like blah blah blah. I got full Molotovs, full nail bombs, and
and like maybe this, maybe I need to get good or whatever, but like that just style of gameplay just doesn't appeal to me because like I'm here to just move through the world and the story anytime I pick up almost any game. That like the challenge of that is like, yeah, I've seen this in other games. I get it. I don't feel like reckoning with it.
Sure.
You know?
I think that's.
I'm glad it's there for people who want it, but it ain't for me.
Yeah, this is as we're recording, I've played through this game twice, and I am now halfway through a third playthrough, and that's just this month. I didn't play this when it first came out. We did this last episode. If you want to hear our storied history with The Last of Us,
it would make more sense to listen to that before this anyway.
This is part 2. We already said that. Okay, so Joel finds it's great because as he's just walking through, he finds a corpse with arrows sticking out of it, and so he takes his arrows, puts them in his backpack. The backpack is a great aesthetic choice for The Last of Us because like every character's got their backpack. And that's like, like in world, it makes sense because like they need to keep weapons and ammunition and food and whatever on them at all times. And
those little flashlights that clip on the backpack.
Oh, I love it.
There's little details about this world that just drive me up a wall, and like how aggressively they want the verisimilitude of like this is what it'd really be like. But there's just an endless resource of these flashlights that everyone in the world has that never run out of batteries, other than having to shake the controller every once in a while.
I was wondering if in the remake they have that function as well. It's very silly, but it works.
Everyone's got one, and they always work. And enemies are never. They can never notice you from seeing your flashlight
or your partner. Like I've had moments where I completely like. I got out of the way of the sight of a hunter patrolling, but Ellie is just like right in front of him, and he just
all the time
completely doesn't see her.
Which is a good gameplay choice, but this is a problem I had throughout. It's like you want this to be so aggressively real. But the gameplay keeps telling me there's a magical realism and fantasy to it. Like, and I was just thinking about this morning. I was thinking about like the average developer on this game was probably 25 to 35 years old, would be my guess. I don't know that for a fact. I'm just assuming based on kind of who works on games and how old like Neil Druckmann and some of the other people in sort of producer level were at the time. And then like Joel, you have to think about like minimum. Let's say he had Sarah when he was 16.
Yeah.
So you add 14 more years. Like he's like
30,
minimum 45.
Yeah.
And like, I don't think these guys know what a 45-year-old body is like.
No,
I think he makes so many jumps that like I was joking. I was like, well, that's a 2-month stay in physical therapy before you can walk again.
Oh, just the amount of like the amount of like kneeling that he does. My knees would be killing me if I was. I think Joel's actually in his mid-50s.
Yeah, and like there's only so much you can justify with like, no, this is a survivor's world. It's like no, dude, you couldn't. Like, bodies have limits.
They sure do. Ellie's body doesn't seem to have a limit on how many cordyceps it can ingest because they get to a point where she's just like raw dogging the spores without a gas mask on. Yeah, and
but
I don't know if
like
I'm
the
like
point of her immunity though, right? It's like they've realized, oh, she's immune, so she doesn't need a gas mask.
Yeah. It's just it's. I think that's one of the more. I understand what it does for the world building and for like gameplay wise. With like you go into a place and you find spores, you're like, okay, that means we're gonna find some higher level infected in here, and like obviously this is more of a dungeon than it is like, oh, let's walk through and just have a nice little cinematic. Yeah. Which is good
or
in
a
terms of like
firefight in an arena. Of
exactly, but I just think like the spore idea, it's like, okay, so if you can see the spores, then you know to put a gas mask on. Yeah. And
they don't go any further than that.
It doesn't seem
they don't
to be
go
like,
further than your line of sight.
That's malarkey,
Yeah.
and it takes me out.
There's a
little
reason
bit.
that we isolated during COVID, you know? It's like, because you can't see how far it's going when you're yapping at people and coughing on them.
No, them masks don't do nothing.
Yeah.
Boy, God, ugh, jeez. Okay.
It's coming back, baby. RFK Jr., health director or whatever. Let's go. We left Who last week. It's all happening, baby. It's 2020 all over again. Let's go. Anyway, this game, you go through.
I'm more stressed about the real world than I am about this zombie apocalypse that we're talking about.
That'll probably be fine. You go through Bill's traps and stuff.
Yeah. Bill's got like proximity traps that are like tripwires with like nail bombs, and it's fucking cool.
Yeah. And then once you get through, you get to like one of my favorite, just like kind of stupid AAA prestige moments of the game. Very Uncharted.
Oh, I know exactly. Yes.
Where
this is Bill's Ewok trap.
And this rope slings Joel's ankle, throws him upside down, but the camera stays in the exact same position you're used to it being.
Over the shoulder.
Yeah, over his shoulder, and you have to do...
You got to do a little shootout.
Yeah. This is like kind of the way the game handles boss fights, you know, is like these moments of like just mixing up what you're already used to in terms of dealing with walls of enemies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It feels like I got one of those like super seeds or whatever from Mario Wonder here.
Yeah,
you know? It's just like, oh, you like this Last of Us? How about we do it upside down?
Mix up the map a little bit.
Yeah.
So yeah, you got to fight off a bunch of dudes with very limited ammo, upside down.
It's just a bunch of infected running at you while Ellie is trying to cut you free from this trap.
Yeah.
And what I like about this is just that like this is more of like a cinematic spectacle that I thought was very unique in like it like kind of broke the pace of the game, and it was like, you know, it's fun. But from a survival horror perspective, like you can't run out of bullets. Ellie will keep Ellie will keep throwing you bullets.
Yeah.
And maybe you can if you like are way too wasteful, but I mean, playing on hard, I didn't have any trouble with this.
Yeah.
I was even able to get some like supreme headshots from like upside down while they like, so like you see all these like infected like running and then like jumping over a chain link fence, and as soon as they land, I was able to get some headshots. Such a good feeling.
Yeah. And
like,
this is another moment where it's like I struggle with the gritty realism you want me to buy. It's like either Joel's a superhero, Superman, or he's not. You know?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
This is absurd.
Well, there's that story about like, you know, this mother who like, you know, she gets in a car accident, the car flips over, and her child's like stuck inside this car that's on fire, and like this one mother is able to like flip the car over with the desperation strength. She rolled a crit 20 and like got like, you know, was able to do it. But you know what I mean? Is the human, I think The Last of Us wants to really just like push, you know, what are humans capable of in the most dire of circumstances.
Yeah, no, right. I get it. I'm just not buying it.
Yeah.
You know?
That's okay. Well, you bought it. You know, you didn't spend a full $70 on it, but you did buy it.
I don't remember. Anyway.
Whatever. I bought it. Fuck GameStop. I hope they go out of business. But yeah, you know what? Support your local retro and new and used video game shops. The locally owned one. Locals only, broski. Yeah. Okay. So Joel, he's hanging from his ankle from this trap that has like a refrigerator as the counterweight, and Ellie's trying her best to free Joel from this trap while avoiding getting eaten by infected. Joel's shooting them, and then Ellie gets him down on the ground, and it looks like we're about to have a game over as this infected is just like going at him. But then, oh, it's Bill. He's got a machete, and he's here to set things aright.
Which again, it's just like I just want to address like Joel while hanging upside down, while shooting zombies. Like, oh yeah, that's the fridge, that's the counterweight. You flip that over, and I'll be fine. Yeah. It's like, sure, man.
You know, perhaps he has set similar traps, and this is all just kind of par for the course.
Yeah,
I don't know. Sometimes you got to think on your feet, and only the strong survive. And this is a video game, and you can just get extra lives.
Well, that's the thing. Is like, is it a video game or not, Neil? That's like my argument when I keep bringing this stuff up.
I like it's, you know, as you go through, Ellie starts reading comic books. We'll get to why in a little bit, but I think Neil Druckmann just wants to be a comic book writer. Like he really leans toward like, and especially in the sequel where you, instead of collecting comic books, you collect trading cards of like superheroes. All of there's just like backstories that you can just read of every character of that's just fake for this stuff, whatever. This is like the most like 2013 zombie movie segment of the game where you're survivor looking to get a car so you can get out of town and, you know, head for, you know, the new civilization. And your weird survivalist buddy Bill. Bill is like the loner. I think what this game is also doing is like they're showing what could happen to Joel if he doesn't embrace like being a human again and not just being kind of like a shellless person. Like the different people that you meet along the way are all just kind of like different variations of what could happen to Joel if things don't go right. And I think Bill is Bill is what happens if Joel does just deliver Ellie and say, that's it. Now I'll go get my guns and now I'll go do this. Like he turns into Bill, a man who's who his first lesson to Joel is like, don't trust anybody and live by yourself and no one can let you down. And like, that's classic, like avoidant personality where it's just like, you know, you if you cut yourself off to the rest of the world, no one can ever like let you down. Right.
Yeah. And to that point about like, this being the most 2013 zombie movie moment and like what it's showing you. And I think this was the first point that like, as I was streaming the game, I was like, yeah, everything that happens in this game feels like I've seen it before. And like, I understand why it's revolutionary for gaming. I understand why it's a big deal, but it's like, none of this is like surprising me. None of it is intriguing me or pulling me in a way I'm like, ooh, that's really interesting. It's just like every beat feels like I felt it coming.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a lot more to add to the longevity of this game to give it some real good legs is the ending. And especially what it accomplishes is The Last of Us paints an accurate portrayal of grief while allowing for the beauty that still happens when you're in the midst of like the biggest funk of your life. Like, and that's both told through Joel's story and through like what happens to the cities. You know, the people are killed, the cities are bombed out, but then there's just this beautiful growth. There's wildlife flourishing. There's not traffic. There's not credit card scores. There's not political drama. There's just life and death. And like that simplicity is one of the more appealing parts of these post-apocalyptic fantasies.
Which again, to like the idea of this being, as I keep saying, sort of like a reactionary narrative, is it emphasizes and like humanity cannot be in harmony with that. Like it sort of argues that humanity is just this scourge that can never adapt and be in harmony with like the natural world. Because everything about humanity in that world is extremely violent and extremely individualistic.
Well, you know that like old Bruce Lee quote, like be water, right? Water fills and it molds and it adapts to any environment that it's present in. I think humanity is fire. Like humanity burns and destroys and molds to its own like likeness, whereas water is nature is water, humanity is fire. And
I'm saying like the acceptance of what you're saying that this narrative perpetuates is like what bugs me. This like belief that that's the only thing humanity is capable of is reinforced by this game in a way that I'm like, I'm just kind of over it in media, you know? Like, I'm like, can we imagine a world, go see Megalopolis, where it's silly, but like it dares to dream like, what if humanity good? Like, what if humanity come together and rise above?
There is optimism in the sequel. This title, you're right. You're dead on about the way that they treat the human condition, where it's either you either choose to be in the quarantine zone where you're basically like, constantly living on welfare while still participating in a militaristic, like compulsive service. I don't know. You're either choosing to be a cog in a rusty machine, or you choose to be a cowboy out in the Wild
West. This
West.
idea that those are the only two things humanity can wrap our brain around. It's capitalist realism all the way down.
Yep.
Even though all the credit cards have been destroyed, all we can imagine are like
ration cards,
fascism or individualistic cowboy, bullshit.
Yep. And I think that there's some course correction in the sequel. That's all I'll say.
Interesting.
Much more optimistic.
Yeah.
So Joel and Ellie are they're following Bill after Bill saves them from that refrigerator Ewok trap, and they need to go to his armory / safe house.
Yeah. I want to talk about like one thing there.
Yeah.
When he gives you the map, I had a moment of like, oh, fuck. Do I have to learn how to read this map?
Thank
with this
God
environment?
you don't.
I was like, oh my God,
Yeah.
no. I like immediately I looked at the map for like a minute, and then I looked up and I was like, I will never understand where a single point on this map is.
Luckily, it doesn't matter. I don't know why they even show you the map.
Yeah.
Like, I
And
really
they do
don't
it a
know.
couple times too.
They show you maps, and sometimes they show you maps as if it's like, I mean, well, here's what I like about The Last of Us as like
you don't need a map.
you don't need a map, but if you are of sound enough mind to make sense of the map and to use it somehow, it's there as a resource, and good on you.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not, the gameplay experience is not dependent on that.
Yeah. So like, I also had a moment when he's explaining like why you need to go to this specific point to be able to get a working car, because I think it's at this point I pulled it up on screen where Ellie's like, why don't we just fix one of these cars? And Bill's like,
oh, what a genius.
He does that annoying like, well, actually Reddit poster thing. First off.
Oh yes, Bill is a Reddit poster.
And like for me as the player, it's like, oh, so I have to actually do this fucking fetch quest is like what I felt through this scenario. It's weird how much like, I don't know, like every time I'd be introduced to, you could think of it as like a new corridor to the next like point of like moving forward.
Yeah.
I felt this moment of frustration for like a minute, and then I'd get going and get over it pretty quick. Like I think I talked about this last time. Like you'll have these moments where it's like press R3 to see your next destination. Right after you finish climbing a mountain, it goes, oh, the peak is even higher. I go, fuck. But like that is the game. So like once you get moving, it's not like that obnoxious. It's a very odd feeling I've not really sensed in other games in quite the same way.
It's kind of like that like when like before you really make good time on a road trip, and you're just like trying to figure out the best way to go. That's the worst part of the trip. But then once you're driving and you're like really rolling, it's all
good.
Like,
there's it's just a feeling I haven't really felt quite the same way in any other game.
Interesting.
This moment right here where it's like Ellie's like, why don't we take one of these cars? I'm like, yeah. Then he goes, no, we can't do that. We got to go through all this bullshit.
Yeah.
I was like, God damn it.
the main driving force, no pun intended, is they need to get a car battery.
Yeah.
And all the car battery cells are dead, kaput. Like, it's been 20 years. And the only people who are making new car batteries that Bill knows of is the Fedra military police people. So the story is like Bill noticed that like, he's living on the complete, lamb right now. He's off the radar. People don't know about him besides Joel and Tess. And like,
did he have a partner?
He had a
learning about a
partner
partner
named
who
Frank.
left him because he was annoying throughout this part of the game, right?
I think they so Bill and Frank are like they're partners, and Bill mentions Frank. He doesn't outright mention Frank, but he mentions that he had a partner that he trusted who let him down. And that just like more solidified his loner, complete isolationist, lifestyle. But we see Frank a little bit later, but right now they the military crashed one of their trucks into a high school, and Bill's like, I bet they left their battery in that truck. We'll go get that battery, then we'll fix up a car. Bada bing, bada boom.
Mm-hmm.
No problem. And there's just a fun there. I mean, this game is full of fun, and the game calls them encounters. Did you do much restarting of encounters? Like not just getting killed, or like you get killed and then it quote unquote restarts the encounter.
Yeah.
But did you find yourself like just being like, oh fuck, I did that a little bit wrong. I want to start that.
Absolutely not. I was
Yeah.
just gunning to the finish line.
Yeah.
But there were some encounters, and I'm glad you brought this up. It's very interesting and odd how and when the game decides to autosave and decide this is a point that you've crossed and we're going to start the encounter here.
I dislike it. I want more control over that.
Like, because sometimes it'll start you 3 seconds from death, which is...
Yeah. But you accomplished something, or you went somewhere and it made that decision to quick save.
Yeah, I don't know. Playing on the easy mode, I didn't mind it as much. It was kind of, and because I'm on the PS5 where it reloads in like 4 seconds.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, this is kind of interesting to challenge me to like respond in the moment. But like, as a player, I don't know where that decision's being made for me. So the longest one I struggled through is actually the next one, the high school.
Yeah.
You've got to go through like this long hallway and then this like chemistry lab class, and then you go to another hallway. And then when you get to the other hallway, the game does this thing sometimes where it's not clear if your objective is to kill everything or
to run.
Which, as somebody who's trying to conserve resources, I don't want to do.
Right.
Or if it's, like you said, to just run. And in this case, I'm pretty sure you have to kill everything, because I ran to the door and it like wouldn't bring up the triangle response, and like I died 3 or 4 times doing that. And there's like a 3 or 4 minute slog back to that point based on how far back they save you. And it's just like, who made this choice and why is a little confusing.
It's an imperfect system. I especially as a diehard like Resident Evil fan, saving is an important decision that's up to the player. That is also dependent on a resource.
Yeah,
when you get into the more hardcore stuff of it.
It's like one of my most hated things about the original Resident Evil, but it's like, at least you made a fucking choice and put it in the player's control.
Yeah. I much prefer the control than the game making this, because playing through on hard mode, I genuinely just enjoy playing this game. I like the mechanics. I like the combat.
It feels good a lot of times.
I love the stealth mechanics of this. I can't wait to replay the Metal Gear series. Like this is making me nostalgic for Metal Gear 3. Like, which I think there's a lot of Metal Gear in general in The Last of Us, but the way that
we gotta find an excuse to play Metal Gear Solid 2 on here.
Yeah, I'll play them all. I've never played 4 or 5.
I haven't either.
4 is really hard to play. I think it was a PS3 exclusive.
It's stuck on the PS3.
That sucks. That completely sucks.
Yeah.
I want to play that one, but I might just buy a PS3. I hate my life. I sometimes hate my decisions. Okay. So, yes. Okay. So they go to the school to get this car battery. Before that, you go to like Bill's armory, where he gives Joel a 12-gauge pump action shotgun.
Only weapon that matters.
It looks. I'm gonna flex my my Second Amendment muscle right now. I believe it's a Mossberg 500 because it's got the safety on the hilt, or I think it's what it's called.
I'm nodding along. Yeah, I know about that.
Yeah, I'm like looking at it. I was like, is that right, Josh? Could you tell me if I'm right? You don't fucking care. I'm more of a Remington 870 guy myself, but that's just because I inherited it from my grandfather.
Yeah, these details are what give us street cred.
Yeah, dude.
Each of us knowing bullshit like
that's
this.
What made us. That's why we're junior camp counselors.
Yeah, because Sean knows about guns.
Yeah, I used a gun to get this job. Okay, so. But you also see that Bill lives in a church, and he like lives up in so the armory is in the cellar of this. I assume it's a Catholic church. I don't know. It's got stained glass, so that to me says Catholic.
It's Boston. It's probably Catholic.
Yeah, right. It's Boston. Of course, it's Catholic. cue the Dropkick Murphys.
Cue the scandal charges.
But yeah, Bill, he's living like basically in like he might as well be living in a confession booth. Like he's
oh yeah, I forgot about his little room.
And I just think that's kind of an interesting detail. Because like if it hasn't been clear yet, Bill is a homosexual, and
what?
I know I hate this woke,
fuck this game.
This woke bullshit, folks. Go ahead and take your tactical toaster and throw it in your tactical bathtub.
You know what's is funny? Because we're gonna talk about the TV series. I don't think we're gonna do every episode.
No.
But I will probably watch at least through the Nick Offerman one, because I think I know just enough to know it's the backstory of Bill and Frank.
Yeah.
And like them being gay, just because of how the liberal media like clapped at Seals about it.
They were like, this is it.
Yeah, they're like, this is drama. This is television. And I'm like, dude, it was already like in the game
10
like,
years ago.
Before I even played it, I knew this was a gay game.
Yeah. Which I mean,
it's like also again like 2013. I think I talked last week about how proud they were of their strong female character, which I disagree with by the end of the game. And like these like this homosexual representation. The way I said homosexual sounded weird. LGBTQ, whatever. It sounded like I am anti-woke or whatever.
Yeah.
But like it's so funny that it's like they have that stuff, but then like the worldview is so much from the other side, in my opinion.
Interesting.
Yeah. Which is a very like 2013 liberal thing to do.
Yeah.
I'm still with her.
Jesus Christ. I think Bill.
Israel has a right to exist.
Jesus Christ.
Anyway.
Bill, I think the more humanizing side is that like his sexuality has nothing to do with his character.
Yeah.
Like it's one of those.
I will say, like, I think it's handled tastefully in the game.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This is the 2013 thing. It's just like here's this character
for
who
2013
happens to be gay.
Right.
By the way, like that's the real like usage of Bill.
It's like I feel like the 2013 quote unquote like woke representation at the time would be like everything's just happening, and then a character turns to the screen, goes, "By the way, I'm gay,"
yes,
and then goes back to the story, and it has nothing to do with anything.
Yes.
Whereas like this is like it's just in the background.
Yeah,
like I think that's pretty tasteful. You know?
I mean, we could also talk about Ellie being a gay person.
Yeah, which I was again. I'm like trying to save it all for later, but like
it's not even like a spoiler alert. But like,
not that it's a spoiler, but like talking about it when it comes up.
Sure. The way that they treat her right now is that she's just a 14-year-old girl who is like somewhat like hesitantly agreed to link up with these strangers to get her to a safe place according to a safe person in her life. Like Marlene, the leader of the Fireflies, is like, I think the way I would describe Marlene to Ellie is that like Marlene is kind of like a distant aunt, where like Marlene was friends with Ellie's mother, like, and knew Ellie since she was born. But like, you know, Marlene's the leader of a revolutionary militia that is like also trying to find a cure for the zombie outbreak. So like, she's not like trying to be like a nanny. So she like ships Ellie off to a military boarding school inside the Boston QZ. I think she's in Boston as well. That makes sense. Yeah. So, you know, Ellie is basically just a kid who's like doing whatever an adult tells her to do right now. That's all that she is. She's not yas queening. She's not like, you know, she's not
girl bossing, gatekeeping.
There's no stereotypes in the LGBTQ representation in this game. Yeah. Which I think is a positive in general. It's just saying, hey, these are people you're going to deal with, like,
nor is it like a story by straight people trying to tell a queer story.
Yeah.
which is also usually does not go well.
The Last of Us is just like, you're going to deal with zombies and super zombies and super mega ultra zombies and people that want to kill you. And yeah, gay people still exist. Like, I Jesus Christ. So they get to the school. They find there's the battery was taken out of the truck that crashed into the school. So what's plan B? I don't know. What's plan C? I don't know. What's plan D? I don't know. All the way through the alphabet. They don't have a plan. But they got to just keep moving because a huge amount of infected attack the group at the school. So as they keep going, they're walking through houses, just trying to find a safe path to like either. I mean, I don't know. They're like right now, like that was their only plan, was to get the car battery from out of the school, and that did not go well. So now they have to just think on the move. They're like walking through like suburbs, and while walking through one of the houses, they find. Oh my God, I want to talk about the bloater fight. I forgot all about the bloater fight in the school.
Yeah, I was trying to punch ahead to that. I thought that's what you were leading up to.
No, I totally forgot that happens in the school. The bloater fight, the first boss fight of this game. The bloater is...
It feels like the only real proper sort of one-on-one boss fight you experience.
It's a cool fight too. The bloater, okay, so biologically speaking, the cordyceps has a mutation that goes along some predictable routes. Immediately upon exposure, you're a classic like running zombie. That's just the screamers or the infected. And then you turn into a clicker where you lose your eyesight because the mushrooms grew in place of your eyeballs, and you're a little bit more powerful. And then there's the bloater, which is like an advanced zombie that has had time for the fungus to take over their body in like an armor plating.
End stage cordyceps infection, basically.
The late stage that we know of now. There's a sequel.
Oh, okay.
And it's great. I mean, I think we talked a little bit about this last time, but like I see if I were to use like Doom characters as like approximations, like the regular infected, those are your shotgun and your pistol zombies. Clickers, those are your imps that they shoot fireballs and they got spiky backs and they're a little bit more dangerous. And then the bloaters, these are your barons of hell, because it's first introduced as a boss fight, but then later in the game you're going to encounter multiple of them alongside other enemies. And is it Baron of Hell or Hell Knights? The pink guys that shoot green fireballs at you.
I have no idea what anything in Doom is called, but I know who you're talking about.
Dude, I found an original Doom 2 guidebook from 1993 at Goodwill for $5.
Sick.
Woo! Oh boy.
This is the only time I really fought one. It's funny, like when I got in the end game where there's seas of them, it seems like.
Yeah.
I was like as much stealth as possible through the final chapter, and like somebody who was watching on stream was like, "Wow, you're really crushing through this," and I was like, "Well, it's easy mode. I don't know how much different that is, but like, this is the only one I fought and took down proper."
Yeah, it's a great boss fight. The way he's introduced is just like, "Oh shit, we got to deal with this." And you got Bill and Ellie are also giving support, and they're taking shots every once in a while at the bloaters, or they're dealing with other infected that are like swarming you. It's a great boss fight. I love the bloater. I love the concept of the bloater. I think that the mutation rates of the cordyceps just adds that much more believability to like this fungal virus that overtakes the population. Like, mushrooms just, if given the right circumstances, they'll just get bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
And and that also just kind of like nails home the fact that like the whole point is to deliver Ellie to the Fireflies so that they can work on finding a cure with her as like the source. And like the intelligent design of the cordyceps, like we don't know if this is supposed to be like the evolution of the fungus that kills ants, like that thing that it's based on. Like I don't know if it's supposed to be like this, that's the thing that just got out of hand and started targeting humans instead of ants, or if there's like something more out of this world about the cordyceps fungus. Like it's up for interpretation. I love that they don't explain it. You know, like Night of the Living Dead is a great example of like this thing happens. There's no clear explanation as to why people are coming back from the dead, but there's like a somewhat ambiguous hint. If you watch Night of the Living Dead as much as I have, and like you pay attention to like the radio broadcast that they occasionally listen throughout, they're like, oh yeah, this one like satellite just came back from a orbit of Jupiter or something like that, and they think that it might have been the radiation that starts the zombie apocalypse.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that as a detail because it's, and then no one ever talks about it again because guess what? It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Damage is done. Now we got to deal with the reality of the fact. But so you defeat this bloater, great boss fight, and then like like what do we do now? Let's just keep moving. Let's keep looking. And they find a house where it turns out this is where Frank, Bill's partner, decidedly ex-partner, hanged himself after getting bit by infected. Seems to be like, you know, Joel and Ellie talk about this later when Ellie sees like a couple that had like committed suicide in a bathtub. And she says, oh, they must have taken the easy way, right? And Joel's like, it is never easy. It's never easy. And like, just like kind of driving home is like, no, like killing yourself is not easy. It's just like, it's more just like accepting a reality. Like you can't undo the bite and like, you don't want to lose your faculties. It's such a zombie trope at this point that it's almost like, why are we talking about this? Like, that's what you do if you get bit. If you don't want to turn into a zombie, you got to kill yourself.
Yeah. Like the game does this. Does it like there's just there's so much of the game like depending on ethical questions that are like, I don't fucking care because I'll never be in that situation, you know? Like,
oh, but it's hypothetical.
Yeah, and like that just doesn't interest me. I'll have much more to say about the ending.
Yeah. I think we should get to that next episode.
Yeah, I'm just gonna try to hold off a lot of things.
Yeah. But in this one at least,
but I think the Bill and Frank thing is like kind of one of your first character based teases of that sort of like, ooh, these ethical dilemmas we're gonna make you think about. And I'm like, just me personally as a player, I don't fucking care.
Yeah.
Like it just doesn't interest me.
I think you know, Ellie especially is dealing with this because she sees that this person got bit and they killed themselves.
Yeah.
Ellie was
and she
bit,
chose not to.
And she chose not to kill
we'll
herself
learn later.
And that's an interesting, you know, I mean, I think Joel's aware of that in the back of his mind too, where he's like, I don't want to tempt her with thinking that like there's just an easy way out. Like, because suicide, self-harm kind of trigger warning, like it is easy to kill yourself. Like it's easy in like a physical sense, but like spiritually, like that's saying goodbye to everything you know and making somebody else clean up your mess.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know. I've dealt with a lot of suicide in my life. And at the end of the day, it just makes me angry that people don't consider the damage that it does when you do those. When you take your life, you're not just killing yourself. You're like, you're killing everybody in your life to some degree. You're saying like, I want nothing to do with anybody. And that's a hard pill to swallow.
Right.
It's hard to also generalize suicide because there are so many states of mind that one can be in to do it.
And like, I can't, I don't know. It's like, I haven't been that far in that state of mind, but I like understand there are, and like, this is part of what the game tries to like get you to reckon with. But again, it's like, it's very unlikely I'm going to be a situation where cordyceps infected humans bite me and, you know, like, but I get like you're trying to show a level of despair of like, imagine yourself there. And like, yeah, okay, I haven't been there. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Like, and sitting with it is not something I consider entertainment for me personally.
Sure. I mean, to finish this like little side story on like, you know, the end of life in this way, like you think about like the ethical conversation around like Dr. Kevorkian, right? Where it's like some people who are terminally ill in pain their entire waking life want to be able to die on their own terms with some dignity and not, you know, dependent on a medical institution that is bleeding them dry.
Yeah, and this is like on that end of things, I'm like, yeah, absolutely, let people go. Oh my God, we can't afford to keep everyone alive forever in misery.
Yeah. I think with Frank, Bill and Frank had a rocky relationship. I think a lot of because you find a letter that Frank wrote to Bill after he was bitten before he kills himself.
Yeah,
and that sheds a little bit of light on the type of relationship that Frank and Bill have, decidedly had.
Yeah.
Where they both seem to be very angry, spiteful people who probably had very aggressive sex. But I think that also that works. That kind of angry love. Just like I show you any emotion that's at least saying that you're here and I love you. If we're arguing, at least we're talking.
Yeah, it's a very sort of toxic situation.
Yeah. Frank wrote Bill a very choicely worded suicide note, not knowing that Bill was even going to find. I mean, because at this point, Frank moved out from Bill's and was just living on his own out in the suburbs on the outskirts of that church where they were bunkered down. And apparently Frank stole a bunch of Bill's stuff, which is a recurring thing that happens to Bill. Bill being a hoarder, scavenger, forager, you can't help but rob this guy. But Frank, basically the gist of his suicide letter was just like, "Dear Bill, I hate your guts. Good luck."
Yeah,
that's more toward the idea that this is that angry love where it's just people who at least if they're arguing, at least they are acknowledging that the other's alive.
In my playthrough, I wasn't paying as close to details between the lines of ooh, what's their backstory like. Yeah. I was just was aware, he's got somebody who was also kind of living this lifestyle with him and he's missing or something. And then I find the letter after you see him dead. And I just thought it was hilarious. He was just I'm killing myself because you're so annoying. After I'd been so annoyed by this guy for the past hour and a half.
Bill is quite grating.
I was like, that's great.
Yeah. I before Ellie and Joel encounter Bill, Joel's kind of giving Ellie primers. He's like, "Oh, you want to be really careful around this guy. Try to let me do the talking," which immediately goes out. Because when Bill and Joel and Ellie first meet, Bill handcuffs Ellie and does this whole were you bit? I don't know, his paranoia is top notch.
Yeah.
But Joel finds that letter, he gives it to Bill. Bill reads it, he's like, well, fuck Frank, I guess.
He's just okay.
But it turns out Frank took the battery from the military vehicle and he had a car ready to go.
Yeah.
It just needs to be jump started.
Yeah, nice stroke of dumb luck.
It's almost like it was supposed to happen. This game
serendipity
starts talking a little bit about what is destiny, what is, I mean, there's a lot to talk about with that in general, but so Bill and Joel, they're pushing a truck while Ellie's trying to pop the clutch and get the jump start going. And turns into another segment from 2004's Dawn of the Dead, where it's just very zombie movie. We're trying to get this car started so we can hit the road with our survivor gear, and little girl's driving the car, and we got to stop pushing the truck because there's more zombies coming at us, and it's fun, it's great. I love these types of little segments where it's it's not just a quick time event. Right, it's not just press triangle until they start the truck. It's you got to stop and there's
multiple layers to how you have to interact with the situation, which is what I go back to about I get why the game's good. This is AAA prestige video games right here.
AAA plus, man. I really enjoy the pacing of this game. Like there's only one segment that we'll get to in the next episode that I felt like dragged a bit, but otherwise I really do feel like this is like they meter it in such a way that it's just like once you start to get like, okay, I get it, then they're done. Like it's okay. So they get the truck started. Ellie pops the clutch and the fellas jump in the back of the truck, and they're driving along, and Bill stops the truck when they get to a good stopping point because he wants to go back home and let them go on their way. Bill is very funny with Joel at this point because he's just like, you got to get rid of that kid. That kid's gonna get you fucking killed. You're an idiot.
Yeah.
Like you have no luck. Get the fuck out of my town. But here's a siphoning kit. You'd be surprised at how many cars still have gas in them. That's Bill's one thing of being like, it's him saying fuck you, go away. But the siphoning kit, that's him saying I love you. Take care. Good luck.
Yeah.
And he's not saying that the same way that Joel can't say, oh, Ellie, I think of you as a daughter, and I've come very fond of you. Like, he can't say that. Neither can Bill, because they're both stoic 2013 men.
Another, just like very regressive worldview of like, men can't talk about feelings.
But he shows his feelings, and he at least does something to communicate that he cares, and he
like
wants,
that,
he's rooting for them.
I don't know, there's something about like, you're supposed to be like touched by this, of like, this is the closest men can get to emoting.
Right.
Isn't it heartwarming? I'm like, not really. No. I get it. And I guess like why that's not going to happen in this game, but it's just, it ain't for me. A lot of details about it are not for me is all. So
on the drive, Joel and Ellie are driving, and Ellie, she stole a couple of things from Bill way back at his armory. She stole a Hank Williams cassette tape, which they both can dig on. She stole a comic book, which becomes the collectible. It's a non-essential. It's a Korok seed, like that, and the Firefly pendants that you find throughout. They're these like completely.
I feel like I didn't find one of the Firefly pendants until I was in the Firefly headquarters or whatever at the very end. I was like, I know I'm supposed to be collecting these along the way, but this is all I got. I found one.
I found like 95% of them, but again, my instinct in what I thought was like, because I don't know if I would call this a survival horror video game. It has elements, at least it's like it'd be in the same section at Blockbuster, but it's not in certain ways. It's hard to say. Anyway, Ellie steals a cassette tape, Hank Williams, great. Love it. Both of them can dig. She gets the comic book. Great. And then she also steals some gay porn from Bill. And, it's a fun, let's make Joel uncomfortable moment.
So like, I thought way too hard about this world, and like, what would a child born after the downfall be like? What would their cultural touchstones be like? What would their humor be like?
Yeah.
Like, because she makes the joke about like, oh, the pages are all stuck together. Like, would that be a joke teenagers still make?
I think so. I think so.
And I don't know. Maybe it's better to go more into this conversation with the prequel stuff in the DLC.
Yeah.
But like, I just kept asking myself those questions of like, how much would they understand about like the technology of the old world and like the humor and the culture and etc. Like it I don't know. And there's something about the 20 years of it all that like, I get why they chose 20 years, because they want to have a pubescent teenager as a main character who wasn't part of the before times.
Right.
And it just, but there's just something about it that's like a jigsaw puzzle that does not fit for me at a lot of moments in the game.
You're touching on something that I had a very similar train of thought about this. So about like what are Ellie's cultural touch points? Like like what are the main like things that she could draw on? Like for our culture, like I it's weird to say, but like I feel like the Wizard of Oz is like one of the more like important cultural touch points that like our Western culture uses.
You could
say
we're not in Kansas anymore to somebody of any age, and even if they haven't seen the Wizard of Oz, they're gonna like know what that means.
That you're talking about Dorothy and Toto. It's a weird thing, but also like obviously the Bible. But like with Ellie, I mean, but she was raised by before timers.
Yeah.
Because like I mean, I feel like we're talking. Do you ever do Children of the Corn?
I don't know if I ever saw it or
It's
not. It would have been like when I was a teenager.
a really
kid.
good Linda Hamilton performance in that one. But these kids, like basically like these kids take over a town and they kill all the adults, and then they're like running this town as like a weird cult. And they keep talking about the before times, the long agos.
Yeah.
And it's just very childish and silly. And luckily, The Last of Us doesn't do that. Where she's not saying like, "Oh, you're a pre-timer,"
Yeah.
or, they don't have an embarrassing lexicon that they could introduce.
I feel like they would though. Maybe.
I don't know.
I feel like it almost could have been enforced a little bit more, like that. Like, oh, she is a little alien to like what adults understand, a little more than a 14-year-old would be.
What I love the most about the sequel to this game is how thoughtful it is about a lot of these touch points, like where because it's not, let's see, The Last of Us is a story about survival, and the sequel is about like what to do with your survival, a lot of it. And right now, like this is like, I mean, god damn, I'm just watching Joel smash some guy's face on the video.
We're watching ultra violence on the screen as we're having this conversation.
So, like, I mean, right now, like this is a time of war, and like the boringness of peace it's like that's an interesting thing to consider in like because like this is the biggest war that humanity has ever faced, the war against the cordyceps,
which is maybe I will say to laud this game's ultra violence and it's the tone of its world is like it's maybe good for the people of my political persuasion, the lefties out there who are like, no, we need revolution now. It's like, you ready for this? You're ready for this? Because I'm not. I would rather not do this.
The naivete of the proto-revolutionary.
As you're posting comfortably on X, the everything app, about how you're going to take down, no, I don't want to do it. I would rather try every other option first. That's like the one thing I think like this kind of thing is good at reinforcing if people can understand it from that point of view.
You ain't ready for what you're asking for.
Yeah. It is not romantic. It is not pretty.
Yeah. So I think fittingly, Ellie, when she's in the car ride into the city. What city are they going to?
Pittsburgh,
They're
baby.
going to Pittsburgh.
You see that big old bridge of the three rivers coming together.
Yeah.
I've never been to Pittsburgh. All I know is I live in Cincinnati, and people say it's basically the same city.
I've driven through, never visited.
Yeah. But like, and I was wondering this as I was playing. I was like, how accurate to these locales are they making these spaces?
Yeah,
and,
I wonder that too.
Because like that view as you're coming in. And you see this sort of like valley where like the suspension bridge is coming over. And my only understanding of Pittsburgh being people say it's a lot like Cincinnati is like, that's Cincinnati-esque. Nice. So I imagine it is Pittsburgh-esque,
Cool. Cool.
Yeah.
I always think about the that like iconic shot that was used in The Walking Dead of the highway leading into Atlanta.
Yeah.
I believe that's 75. I-75.
Probably.
I grew up in Atlanta, so it is just cool seeing the city all fucked up.
Yeah. So as you approach Pittsburgh,
PA,
it's interesting to see, like, as we've talked about, like the game's pacing is very, very good, and the Pittsburgh sequence, because each sort of act is told without interruption almost. Maybe you'll have a moment where they sleep overnight in like a burned out room or something. But other than that, it's like pretty contiguous.
Yeah. And
the Pittsburgh section is like a third of the game or more. It's pretty long.
Okay. Yeah.
And I feel like you spend most of it just kind of wondering like why we're spending so much time on this. As like the first thing that happens is you come into town and you're like, uh-oh, the road is not clear anymore as we've come to what is probably like the biggest city, depending on like what highway they took between Boston and where they're going, that they'd hit. And they go, oh yeah, there's disruption. We can't predict like what each pocket of where civilization used to be is going to look like as we have to approach it on these highways.
Yeah.
And so what do they get shot at on their way in?
Oh, okay. I got this. So they're driving in. Ellie's asleep in the back of the car, or she's in the back seat sleeping, or maybe in the front seat. I don't remember, but it doesn't matter. Ellie's asleep. Joel's driving. Still listening to the Hank Williams thing. I want to talk just 1 second more about Hank Williams.
Nice needle drop.
It's also okay. So when at the very beginning of the game, when you're still playing as Sarah, you can find a birthday card that she meant to give her dad, but didn't have. She forgot to give it to him before she fell asleep. And in the card, she just mentions, she's like, Dad, like, even though you hate the movies that I love, you hate the music that I love, even though like you'd rather do anything besides talk about your feelings, I want you to know that you're like a great dad and I love you. And Ellie like finds this tape and she's like, it's old music. It's like, I figured you like old people music, right?
Yeah.
And like they're listening to it, and Ellie at that point, like, she's like, you know what? This is okay. Like, she's starting to like dig it. And like that, I think, is one of the, I think that's the second time that Joel starts to think, Ellie, she kind of reminds me of Sarah, except she's like almost an even more perfect daughter to him in some ways, that like they have similar tastes and like they have like shared trauma that they're both dealing with. The whole game is really about just Joel and Ellie's relationship. Like that's the most important thing that's happening on the screen is the planting of the seed and the flowering of this new father-daughter surrogate. And I just thought that was an extremely interesting little detail where it's just like Sarah, she was like, you know, a classic like teeny bopper. She's a very different girl than what Ellie is. Like Ellie's kind of a tomboy, she's tough. She seems to like have an appreciation for like retro stuff, like, and that doesn't seem to be what Sarah is. So it's not that like she's a replacement for Sarah. I don't think that that's what they're trying to do. That I don't think they're trying to say like, have Joel say like, Ellie, you truly remind me of Sarah in every way. Even your mannerisms are like hers.
Yeah.
That's not the point.
It's more about like waking him up to the idea of living for something other than just your own survival.
Exactly.
Again.
Yeah. Yes. So they're driving in, and a man jumps out in front of the truck, and he's like holding his stomach. There's blood, and he's like, help, help, help. And that wakes Ellie up, and Joel's like, Ellie, put your seatbelt on.
Yeah.
And
we got to barrel through this guy.
Ellie's like, no, we got to help this guy. He's like, Joel's like, that guy's not even hurt. He just guns the engine, starts driving at this dude. And then the guy gives up the act and starts opening fire at them. And it's just like that, like, it's like an injured ploy that like preys on human kindness. Right? Like it's your human, like this is the instinct of a good person.
The absolute pessimism about like humanity in this game.
This is a real thing though. This is something that people have done and continue to do, is they fake injury to get help.
Yeah, but
then they take advantage of that human kindness.
I'm not denying that. I'm just saying the game tells you like this is humanity all the way down.
Well,
I don't like that.
It's saying this is what humanity has been reduced to in these circumstances. Because in the quarantine zone, you don't see this type of desperation. That in the quarantine zone, the desperation you see is the fight against Fedra, who is they're cutting rations in half, or they're arresting you for arbitrary reasons, or they're executing you in the street. But like the desperation is like you find all of these burned out quarantine zones where the Fireflies or whatever whatever like posse that defies Fedra. Like that's the desperation.
I think like to sell me on the idea that this is worth it, this like going outside of quote unquote civilization, I need to see a little more detail of the quarantine world that says that this sort of like, oh, rationing is like, that's an abuse of power that's happening, and not just like, no, truly like this is the best we can do for people who want to live in a civilized society.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Well, as we get to like what Tommy is doing when you find him in Jackson, I remember that's in Jackson specifically.
Yeah.
That is the optimism. That's the socialist. Like,
yeah, and
you know,
Joel's like, we can't be that. We can't do that.
I got this great timeshare.
Yeah.
In Gaza.
But anyway, like, yeah, moving along with like the Pittsburgh stuff.
Right. So they crash the car after this attack from the Fallout would call these guys raiders, but in this they're called hunters, which are just people that prey on other people to steal their resources.
Yeah.
Plain and simple. And
we now spend like a couple hours like dealing with hunters moving through Pittsburgh. And like the sort of alignment of gameplay and story that is introduced here is this sort of that the sense that you, the player, and Joel feel when he's separated from Ellie, like when he's separated from his little koala baby now, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I think it's like that penguin in Mario 64.
Throw it right off the cliff.
Help.
Man.
This is like the equivalent of that, with higher sort of story stakes to it.
Sure.
Because that happens like as you wander through the hunter headquarters, or I don't know.
It's just they're like
it's just kind of what place some of them are hanging out.
Yeah.
Eventually, a elevator breaks. Right.
That's right. Yeah.
And you're separated from her for a while.
The hunters had this interesting trap that they set before Joel crashes his truck. And I think this is, again, like Druckmann really likes parallel, like he likes stories being symmetrical and having like, this is just this happening under different circumstances because Joel's driving the truck and the hunters, and you can miss this if you're not like watching the video closely, but like the hunters have a bus set up that is like basically used as a battering ram to like hit the truck from the side, which is a mirror of when Tommy was driving Joel and Sarah, and they're in this is the second car crash we've seen Joel in. And this is now like it turns into, and then it's just fight with these hunters until they get to the this elevator part where
they have like, you know, a couple moments throughout the journey till we get to the elevator where it's a little, let's stop and see just kind of how wretched the hunters are.
That's
like,
right. We're working our way through a hotel because Pittsburgh is flooded. Oh wait, no. I'm messing up. No, Pittsburgh is just like bombed out. And to get to where they needed to go, they have to cut through his hotel, which turns out to be like a hunter like HQ. And Joel and Ellie, they're like in an elevator chute on top of an elevator car, and Joel's like lifting Ellie up to like get her to the next floor, and the elevator falls underneath him. And this is, so they're like separated, or Ellie's on the top level and Joel's on the bottom level. And we have this amazing like basement fight where Joel needs to find a key card to get through a locked door, but the locked door can only be activated once Joel starts up a gas generator in the basement. And once he starts the generator, like a bloater and several clickers and infected just start swarming him, and it turns into this great like run and gun segment that if you play it right, you can get through without having to kill a single infected, which I just did on my most recent playthrough on hard because I've got the like layout memorized at this point. Like I understand. I think in the last episode I said, I was like, I don't know how you would want to speed run this game, but here I am speed running this game.
You start to learn the maneuvers.
And I find what to enjoy about that as well.
Yeah. I'm going to make Neil Druckmann the butt of one more little jokey note here. The entrance to the hotel, it's like, I think it's like where a Fedra maybe installation used to be, and they've like sort of taken it as their own, or I don't know if they built this on their own.
Yeah. So this was another quarantine zone like Boston, except Fedra was overrun.
Yeah, but it has like this gated zigzaggy space that's like, oh my God. I haven't been to Israel, but I've seen what the gates like between Israel and Palestine look like, and this is what it looks like.
A military blockade.
I like, what? This is weird, man.
See, it reminded me of waiting in line for the Beast at Kings Island.
Yeah, like this is what Palestinians have to go through every day. Like, well, before they were all whatever, to just be allowed to just work a job in Israel. Like they have to do this for like 2 or 3 hours a day.
That sounds chill.
It's just like, and you just put it in a game as entertainment. It's bizarre. But anyway, I just like, it was driving me crazy when I was playing it. But yeah, back to that thing, the section we were at.
At least these areas are being portrayed as like bad places that are not like the right response to the situation.
Right, but there's something about there's like a cognitive dissonance.
Yeah.
Like, anyway.
There's a lot of really great environmental storytelling in The Last of Us in general, but like the graffiti that you find on the walls, or you'll find executed soldiers' corpses and then like a message written next to it. And I think the one that I liked the most was "You'll die before we starve." Which is just like, yeah, say that to the hand that feeds. That rocks.
Yeah.
Especially if they're withholding the food. So, okay. Joel and Ellie get separated, right? And it turns into a little solo mission. And gameplay wise, absolutely no difference.
Yeah.
Like Ellie's not there, and I'm like, where's Ellie? Oh, right. She's on the elevator or whatever. Like it doesn't make a single difference. It's like, I like that she later in the game when Ellie is armed, she can be of use. And she actually now that I think about it, she has like thrown a few bottles at infected to like help me at this point.
Yeah.
So she's not like useless.
Yeah. I never had like a moment where I'm like, within the gameplay, I'm like, wow, Ellie saved my butt.
Yeah.
But you do have moments where if you look at her, you're like, oh, well, we're about to get to it. And this is like what the separation leads up to is eventually you're in the hotel.
Yep.
I don't know if it's like a lobby or a restaurant or something.
That's right.
But Joel is like just climbing a ladder and just gets face stomped down the ladder, and it's like, uh-oh. And he's like drowning in a short puddle. And
the puddle breaks his fall at least.
Yeah. And does Ellie shoot?
Yes. Yeah. This hunter is just like drowning Joel in the puddle, and Joel's reaching for his gun, which is underwater as well. And like this entire, I think one of the weakest parts of this game are these like little quick time events where it's like, oh, I've got to press square.
I'm so immersed.
That's so stupid. Like that doesn't do anything for me as a gamer.
Yeah, was like my joke every time it would happen. I would be like, ooh, thank you, Neil. I'm so immersed in the action now.
Let me jam on the triangle button or the square button.
Which,
so
like,
stupid.
To be fair,
2013.
There's moments where they did this, and it's I think Final Fantasy VII Rebirth has done this the best that I've experienced. That the PlayStation 5's controller's vibration function is like you can make it extremely nuanced.
Yeah.
And in that NoClip documentary about the remake, they were bragging about how they used that in this game, and I never really noticed it to super great effect. Like in Rebirth, there's moments where like you're crawling or as Cloud, or like you're like really trying to push a door open or something, and you have to like press R2 and L2, and they really resist you. Like in a way that you feel physically a little bit more immersed. And this game, like they could have done that in all those quick time events in this remake, and they didn't, but they still bragged about it in the documentary. Like,
interesting.
That was like, maybe they just hadn't, because this was I think an early PS5 release, that maybe they just hadn't dug that deep into that capability, but it's there, Yeah. Like anyway.
So as early as like Bill's armory, Ellie has been like arguing to be armed. Like she's like, why don't you let me have a gun? Like straight up, like I can help you. And Joel's like, well, just let me worry about that kind of stuff. And
that's man stuff.
So as this hunter is like drowning Joel, Ellie shoots this guy in the head, and like rightfully so, she's like having kind of like a panic attack after it happens. She's like, just like, I mean, you know, just kind of coping with the fact that she just took a human life, and like, you know, she did the right thing. She was like, Joel, it was either him or you. Like, what do you? And because Joel's response is like, you're lucky. I'm just lucky that you didn't blow my goddamn head off.
Yeah.
And like, I don't need a kid with a gun around here. Like, basically, like diminishing and minimizing everything Ellie just did to save his life, which shows, I think, at this point also is that Joel doesn't really have that much value on his life. He just knows that he needs to survive. It's like he's like, I wonder if he would have been, if it would have been nice for him at that point to die.
Yeah.
Like, you know, just like he's a miserable.
I mean, that's how
bastard.
I would feel about a lot of moments in Joel's life.
Yeah.
Like, and this is another moment where it's like, I've seen this. I know exactly what's happening here.
Yeah.
It's like straight out of The Walking Dead. Carl, you're a man now. You can have a 6-shooter.
That's right. That's right. You're a compañero. So
Carl, I kind of missed that meme of that show.
Coral.
What was it? Anyway,
but so Ellie shoots this hunter, and Joel is just like, ugh, like kids hate him. He's very grumpy, and he's not willing to show a shred of vulnerability to Ellie. Ellie, she's distressed. She's feeling like, I mean, she's being kind of gaslit into like to thinking that she didn't just save his life. Like, he's just like treating her so flippantly, and like Elliot is like justifiably just kind of like, man, fuck Joel. Like, and in this like little moment, like the next like 20 minutes of the game, Ellie's very distant, and she like, there's like, because there's so many times where you can like walk up to a character and press triangle and you'll have a little conversation. There's a few scenes that are optional, and
they usually happen around like a cutscene, quick time event filled thing like this, of like something just happened, and now we can slow down and choose to have a conversation.
Let's decompress.
Yeah.
And Ellie wants more responsibility, and Joel's reaction to her saving his life is that like he's just like resistant to like giving her more responsibility. He's like, I can do this. I'm the survivor. And once Ellie like literally saves his life, Joel, his way of like apologizing is they get to this next group of like hunters that are on the street, and Joel takes a rifle out of a dead man's hands and he gives it to Ellie, and he's like, I need you to watch my back, you know, make every shot count. Like, do you know how to shoot a rifle? And like, it's just a very
click, dude.
It's just very
Ain't that hard.
I think the word I'm looking for is pragmatic.
Yeah.
Joel is like, he's very much like, oh, I need to do this. And even though I didn't tell you that you've earned my trust, you have earned my trust enough to take this gun and watch my back while I go do this stealth
Yeah, doesn't
mission.
he do like the classic, like, watch for the kickback kind of thing?
Yeah.
Of course.
It's going to kick a hell of a lot more than a BB gun.
Yeah.
Because Ellie, even though she's been going to military boarding school, the only gun experience that she seems to have is with a BB gun shooting rats, which I have to assume was a food source. Like, because we do see rats being cooked earlier in the game. Makes sense. But Joel shows trust and respect by giving Ellie a sniper rifle, essentially. And after Ellie does a great job backing Joel up, because like at that point you can choose to either engage with a big group of hunters or you can sneak around them. But I think actually you have to kill them all, because that's the way I played it. And
I don't recall. Is this when the first time they see the turreted tank thing as you're sneaking through here right before you meet
before we meet Sam and Henry?
Yeah.
I
think you see it at some point.
we're gonna have to.
I feel like I snuck through here.
We're gonna wrap this after this segment, because that's pretty
That's a
much
whole
where,
other chapter
where
now.
I'm getting. Yeah, Sam and Henry. That's a whole other can of worms. But Joel gives Ellie a small semi-automatic handgun after she proves herself again. I mean, like, Ellie's done nothing but prove herself at this point. She's done nothing counter to what Joel said. The reason Joel was so grumpy and like rude to Ellie is because he told her to stay put and she didn't. but she saved his fucking life.
Yeah.
Like it's just one of those. It's like, Joel, you're like, your pride is getting in the way of your reason right now.
Yeah.
And I think by giving Ellie the guns, like he is now treating her more as an equal and not just as cargo that needs to be shipped to the next drop off point. Like now he's like, oh right, like you can be of use. Like what better than having a child soldier at your side?
Everyone loves having a good child soldier to aid them in the revolution. That's what makes it easy.
Yeah. Josh, what else you want to talk about this part? I'm pretty much at the story point like that I think is a good drop off.
I think like I'll reiterate that the size and scope of this section of the game, it never feels really badly paced, but it is like when you zoom out, you go, holy like we just yada-yada'd over like 3 hours of gameplay, you know, and talked about mostly just the story beats, and that's it. I don't know, it just fascinates me in a way that like I don't quite understand.
I really enjoy the difference in combat with clickers and infected versus humans.
Yeah, and how much of this is focused on human combat.
Yeah.
It feels like it's doing that thing that we joke about all the time. The real threat is man, like really doubling down on that.
Sincerely doubles down on that. It's almost aggressively doubles down on that.
And that seems to be the overall idea, aside from all this, the relationship stuff of the Pittsburgh section of why did we stop in Pittsburgh? To show you just how violent man is at this outside the quarantine zone.
That's right.
You know?
Yeah. They these hunters, I mean the hunters as like a character group are just reprehensible. Like it's just like I'm trying to think of like what a modern day equivalent would be, and I can only really think of like it's a gang. Like it's a gang of like desperate men who are militaristically like bunkered down and like taking shifts attacking passerby. Yeah, I don't know. They're like vultures, piranhas. I don't know.
The far extreme of like right wing militia of our modern times. Of like those guys are like they're cosplayers because they like to imagine the world is like it is in this game.
Yeah.
So they don't come to the point of violently executing people very often. Thankfully,
they almost got that Michigan
they like
governor.
To imagine they live in this world and like they're these guys, you know.
Yeah. We're just doing what we need to survive.
Yeah,
it's like, dude, you have a PlayStation 5. Like,
dude, you spend all day on 4chan. What are you talking about?
Dude,
the world's a violent, scary place.
Dude, you're getting junk mail from guns.com.
So yeah, I believe this first round before we meet Sam and Henry, you have to run from the turret gun.
Yeah,
here,
yeah,
right?
yeah. You're having just a normal old gunfight with these hunters, and then a military Humvee, the same kind of one that they were trying to get the battery out of in the high school. It's got a 50 caliber machine gun with unlimited bullets on it, and the sharpest eyes on any machine gunner I've ever seen in a video game.
Yeah, they really crush you and pin you down. So no, I just kind of wanted to stop and hit on this. Is like, oh, this is their way of doing like another boss fight flavor, where taking down the quote unquote boss is not necessarily the agenda or goal here.
Yeah. I like this kind of video game because this quote unquote boss presents itself and we don't see a health bar above its head.
Yeah, there's no health bar, there's no damage to be done. You just kind of gotta keep running. I think is this a situation where you find a door eventually and then go to a cutscene?
Yep. Yeah. It's not a fight, it's a flight. Yeah. Like you are running from this dragon. I mean, like that's what this Humvee is. It's just a fire-breathing dragon that's chasing you down.
Very well stated. Yeah. So we'll sort of stop at that point.
Yeah, we'll pick up next episode with Sam and Henry and all the goofy hijinks you get into with those knuckleheads.
Yeah. And that that boys desire just to take home just one little Gundam toy.
Oh, that makes me so sad. To me, it looked like a Megazord, but
Yeah, or more like Voltron-ish.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll talk about that next time, I guess.
There's no shortage of sad vibes here at The Last of Us. Speaking of sad vibes, I think somewhere near this point in the game, I want to just mention this before I forget about it. The fellas over at Naughty Dog, they recreated the office from The Office in this game, and you can just come across it at one point during one of these like hunter stealth fights,
which I guess that it's also in Pennsylvania is like the joke.
Yeah.
Scranton, PA.
Yeah. So
that's cute. Again, yeah, that just sort of speaks to me of like, I don't know, just like the low culture influences behind The Last of Us. That it's like, it ain't that deep. It's not literature,
dude,
you know?
Thank God John Krasinski didn't play Joel in The Last of Us. They could have made that decision so easy. I mean, he's basically Joel in A Quiet Place. Right? It's just him wearing flannel, looking haggard, and going, shh.
Yeah.
This stupid, sad puppy face. I hate John Krasinski.
I kind of hate The Office.
I do too, dude. Oh, let's bond over that.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Let's watch it and say, I'm not like Dwight.
Yeah.
I'm not an autistic farmer. Wait, whoops, I am. I literally am. I'm not a beet farmer, at least. Yeah. Anyway,
maybe you should put some in this year.
Sarah would like that. My wife. Don't. Anyway, fuck. Campers, if you get bit, tell an adult.
Yep.
And don't trust cops.
Yeah, that's another good point of advice. Anyway, we'll pick up here next week.
If you'd like to write to us, send a message to campvideogames@gmail.com and follow us on Instagram @campvideogames. If you want to become a real happy camper, you can support Camp Video Games on Patreon. For $5 a month, you'll be granted access to even more discussions about movie-based video games, game-based movies, full-length commentaries, playthroughs, and more. Whether you sign up or not, we're glad to have you here at Camp Video Games.